Good afternoon, everybody. Again, we'd like to reconvene our last agenda item for today. Again, just a friendly reminder of the meetings this evening. This afternoon, Treaty 3, 4 p.m. executive dinner meeting in the Britannia room. That's at 4 o'clock. 5 p.m. Nan Caucus dinner meeting, the Mavis room. 5:30, Chiefs of Ontario Health Coordination Unit, the Cawthra room, and 6 p.m. Chiefs Committee on Housing, a dinner meeting in the Lakeshore. So that's the meetings for this evening. And I'd like to call up our co-speaker and friend, Evelyn, to bring us into the next agenda item.
Miigwech, Daryl. Okay, so we're back in for the last session of the afternoon. As you'll recall, this morning we amended the agenda to make time today to discuss the carbon tax issue. That was a request made by Denise Stonefish. So my understanding is that Chief Peter Collins will be taking on this. Chief Henry. Chief Peter Collins is apparently going to be taking on this discussion. Is he in the room? Okay. Oh, where is he? Oh, there you are. So, Chief, if you want to come up and lead off the discussion regarding the carbon tax issue, and if others of your colleagues are coming up to assist, we'll accommodate them as needed. And it's my understanding there is a draft resolution that will be coming to the floor when it's ready for distribution. I'm not sure if that'll be today or not, but it's definitely in the queue to be developed as a draft resolution for your consideration. So, Chief Collins.
Thank you, Evelyn. I didn't realize I was leading off the discussion, but I'll lead off the discussion anyway, and I have moved the resolution. But one of the things that I want to talk about, and I remind folks of when we took on the HST issue, and when it was imposed upon us by the government of the day, we took to the streets, we took to the government offices. I mean, we've challenged them on every aspect of the HST issue. And one of the things that we stood our ground on is, you know, we're not obligated to the tax based on our treaty. And I think this is another form of that tax. They're trying to maneuver a new tax and try to, massage it or camouflage it with a new carbon. One of the things that we say in our communities, we're all responsible, and we want to protect the air and the environment that we live in. And when we went to the streets and took on the challenge of HST, we had an organization, a grassroots organization, helping the cause and Idle No More. You know, and those folks and those grassroots folks were very vocal and very strong and very adamant about our rights in our lands and our entitlements. And, when now the government's trying to create a new format of taxation on us in this carbon tax, and one of the things that we have to remind ourselves and remind each other is that the first set of that is coming into effect April 1st, which is now we see a 4 or 5 cent increase in our gas. And they're saying by July 11th, probably going to be 11-ish or 12 cents a litre more for each of our organizations in our communities. And that's a challenge that we face in our elders who live on low income now. You add that 11 cents in taxation or a form of tax, it'll have an impact on their livelihood and how they move around, because they can't afford that no more. They can't afford, I've already gotten elders calling me, what are you going to do? 4 cents a litre added to our gas today has an impact on my end result that to carry me through the month when I live on a minimum income. So, and we look at this thing as this government is trying to force another taxation on us, and I think we need to stand our ground. And a similar ground that we took on the HST, and we've hit the streets, and if that's what it takes again, we'll have to do it again. We went from from south to west, to east to north, and we challenge every aspect of this. We went and actually we were standing in Oshawa at a minister's office, and he was inside. We know he was inside, but he wouldn't let us in. But the people that took the challenge and took on this task, very vocal. And if we need I don't know, more movement again, I think that's the format that we should look at. But we need to take a strong stance on this, and we can't accept this new carbon tax being imposed upon our community. Again, Ontario Regional Chief, we need to be strong and give the government a clear message. We no longer recognize any form of tax being imposed upon our communities. So take off the carbon tax in our communities. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Collins. Microphone 3, please. Oh,
Is it on? Yeah.
yep.
Chief Jerry Kett, Dokis First Nation. I second the motion on this, and we're open to any input. One of the reasons why also that it says they're going to have a refund for those who file income tax. Many of our people don't even file income tax. And it says on average, a household of 244 with a return of 300. I don't know if that takes account on the location of our First Nations and where people travel to, that distance that it's involved. I think that the gas and the liters that we spend, I know for us in Dokis, just to go for groceries or anything, it's far to be there. And I won't pretend how far it is for some of the northern communities actually to get somewhere. So that average household, what you spend, I don't think it takes consideration the location of our First Nations. And this is something dear to us. Some of us, as Chief Collins says, people are tight, their budgets, and this will just increase, and they'll have to come back to us to make sure that we assist them. And just basic needs, just for groceries or getting medical assistance, and it touches all our budgets. So please review it and comment as needed.
Thank you. Microphone 1, please.
Chief Wilfred King, Kiasagi Nishnabek. I just want to, caution everybody here that, I'm not really adverse to the carbon tax. I know that, it might be an issue in relation to Aboriginal or treaty rights or Section 35 rights. But my concern is that there is some benefits to this carbon tax, and we talked about what's happening in terms of climate change and global warming. On one hand, we're asking the governments to do something about global warming and climate change, and yet we're opposing this carbon tax now. And I believe that this carbon tax is a way to help change climate change. So I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on carbon tax. I know it was explained to me maybe 2 or 3 times, but I still don't get it. So, but for us to entertain resolutions at this table, what are the? I think there should be more thought brought into this process, because my understanding is that carbon tax may be a good thing, and I'm not sure if I'd be willing to support or entertain a resolution on challenging it on a treaty right basis or not. I think we have real concerns what's happening with global warming, especially in Canada, where it's 4 times faster than anywhere else in the world. And we see a lot of what's happening in terms of the polar ice caps melting and so forth. So on one hand, we're trying to save a few cents at the gas pumps, but at the same time, global warming is affecting us. So I really think that we should really consider this in more detail. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I'm not sure if Chief Collins is an expert on it, or the Secretary of the Resolution is an expert on it. But I think we need to really look at this in more detail and maybe come back with a report, because I hate to see this get challenged on a basis that perhaps does us more harm than good. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Microphone 3, please.
Hello, Chief Hill, Six Nations. I agree with Chief King that we do need to support the climate change and things that we can do. And I think one of the things that we should doing is people should be going to our elders and our traditional knowledge keepers to do more practices on climate change and that sort of thing. And I just pointed out that number 2 says that we do support the reduction of greenhouse gases. And I think I don't think we're opposed to what the carbon tax is I guess, aim is to do, which is to reduce those gas emissions, and I think we're agreeing with that. So maybe I think what we're opposed to is the fact that people in our communities are being taxed, and we in our areas we have tax immunity as the First Peoples in this land, and I think, you know, similar to what Chief Collins said this morning when we were talking about how we oppose the HST. So maybe instead of opposition, maybe it's we should be getting an exemption. I'm just looking at wording. We should be exempt because we have tax immunity in our communities, and we do not want our people taxed. And one other thing I want to say is that this resolution is just referring to gasoline, well, natural gas. I just wanted to say, and I'm going to, if I could, I'm going to ask Chief, I was going to say Chief Steve Williams, former Chief Steve Williams, who is chair. We have our own gas company at Six Nations. Six Nations Natural Gas Company, and what is going to start happening is because our supplier is going to start charging this carbon tax on people's heating bills who are heating their homes with natural gas. So it's much more for our community than it's just with the gas pumps. And Steve is the chair of our Six Nations Gas Board, so if I could, I'd like him to just expound on that a little bit. He's right behind you, Evelyn.
Sorry. Sneaking up on me. Perfect.
Thank you. Yes, I am the chair of the Six Nations Gas Company, and April 1st, the natural gas went up 4 cents. Gasoline in our community went up 5 cents. And every April, it's going to go up again. So unless we do something, because now because I'm chairman, I'm going to get all these people that we service natural gas to complaining. How come it's up? How come it's up? Delivery cost is up as it is, and now it's another tax that we have no ability to stop. So we're asking, you know, we should be doing something with this. And I agree with the chief that we should be exempt, like we did under the HST, and I think we should continue pushing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 4, please.
Bonjour, Chief Mel Hardy, Rocky Bay First Nation. You know, on the whereas on number 4, I do request a friendly amendment, and it is it states that first. The GGPPA charge amounts to a tax on First Nations. I'd like the friendly amendment is and breaches First Nations tax immunity as reaffirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada. That's what I'd like to add on there.
And breaches, did you say? And breaches First Nations tax immunity as upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada?
As I have reaffirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada.
Okay.
Upheld is just as good as either or.
Okay. One of the things that may have to be considered in terms of, first of all, I don't know if this is, did you want this resolution to hit the floor now for discussion, Chief? Or was, because I know this morning the discussion was to amend the agenda to discuss the issue of carbon tax, but we've sort of leapt right into a discussion of the resolution. And one of the things I've noticed in the resolution that maybe we should look at is a resolution at this time required if what you're requesting on the request on the first 3 paragraphs is direct the Chiefs of Ontario to do a legal review and analysis of whether or not this tax applies on reserves. I think that's what the issue is that I'm hearing being discussed at the moment. So whether or not you want to take a political stand in terms of a resolution at this stage without understanding what the legal implications or applicability of a possible, what could be considered a tax on reserves, might be putting the cart before the horse. I'm open, obviously, for discussion, but I don't know who the legal counsel is to the Assembly this week. Is it Krista? Okay, so just hearing what the chiefs are saying now, whether or not this resolution is premature when what's being requested really is an analysis of whether or not the increase in the gas prices and fuel prices should apply on reserve. Yeah.
I think what we can do is either, do we have that on the screen somewhere? Yeah, either delete number 1 altogether, or leave number 1, reject the application of the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act on First Nations, pending a review by the Chiefs of Ontario. One or the other.
Or just put, Chief Collins is suggesting something?
So my suggestion, based on comments by Chief King and Chief Hill, talking about, let's take the greenhouse or the greenhouse discussion out of that resolution and implement a resolution stating that we are opposed to the recent tax being imposed upon our communities. The new tax that come into place on April 1st.
Is that a whole new resolution then?
He's asking for the whole new resolution. Do you want to just table this so you can rejig it?
You take the discussion about pollution out of it, right? Yeah. As a legal person. So I guess my comment, and you're a legal advisor and you're all sitting at the resolution table there, you know, make sure that we're not doing injustice to the environment and based on the comments of our previous speakers. And we talk about the opposition to the recent tax implications that have been imposed upon our community on April 1st. You word that? I mean,
I can word that, but I think we have to change the other parts of the preamble and
so you have to change the preamble too, right?
I think, well, if we're not going to use Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act in it, then lots of that has to be changed, which can be done. But just changed.
Again, you're a legal advisor. Is this going to turn legal issue based on the carbon tax and the environment that we're solely strongly protect?
No, and I'm saying that definitely we can do exactly what you're asking, not with these words. I want to just use different words to say that.
Okay. Well, let's take another try at redraft, and we'll resolution committee help Chief and his seconder redraft it so that it suits the proper legal identifiers in terms of which legislation is possibly having to be examined here, as well as the terminology in terms of climate change versus greenhouse gases versus what other terms may be needed to clarify what's actually trying to be drilled down into in this resolution, what the request is in terms of a task from Chiefs of Ontario to do an analysis or what have you, and to tighten it up to take into consideration what the other chiefs commented is what Chief Collins is asking. I think it was microphone 3 first.
Good afternoon, Kevin Moss of G-Bossing First Nation proxy. It's their mess. They can clean it up and they can pay for it. That's my thoughts on that. I've got in front of me a copy of an invoice. I get fuel delivered to my home. I buy it in bulk. And there's another tax that I see right here in front of me on my invoice from my supplier that says federal excise tax of 10 cents and the Ontario fuel tax of 14.7 cents. Maybe some people don't realize that, but there is a federal tax on our fuel that we never see. We always apply for the 14.7 and we get that back. We've never actually tackled the 10 cents. In regards to the carbon tax, I think it's a great concept. I still don't want it in my community. It's their mess. Let them clean it up. Let them tax their own people in regards to that. They shouldn't tax us. Maybe one thing we could do as part of if we ever get into any type of negotiation with the feds, because it is a federal carbon tax that's being imposed upon us. That other aspect on my bill, or that other line item that says federal excise tax of 10%, maybe there'd be some kind of negotiation on that. No one's ever tackled that other excise tax that we pay from the feds. So maybe we'd still look good, and maybe accept possibly the carbon tax, and we'd still come out smelling like roses. But in the background, we can get rid of that freaking that 10 cents that sits right there on my bill for every liter of fuel that I purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 4, was it, or microphone 1? 1? Okay.
Oh, Chief King, Kiosk I just, Madam Chair, I want to make sure that we don't cloud the issue here. I know that there is on item point number 4, about the Supreme Court decision recognizing that First Nations don't have to pay tax. That's not entirely true. Many of you members do pay tax if you live off reserve. You have to meet a certain test as enunciated by the Supreme Court of Canada, and you know, having that, even the PST, technically it's a policy decision not to charge that PST. So we don't have that tax immunity that we think we have, so let's be clear on that. So I don't like to reference any Supreme Court decision in a resolution that does not clearly articulate that we do have tax immunity. So I want to make that sure that's clear, because there are a lot of our people that pay income tax because they don't meet the current tests by the Supreme Court of Canada. They cannot get the tax exemption, for one. Also, again, I want to remind everybody that PST is a policy decision, has nothing to do with the court decision. So let's make that clear. And I don't want to see it in a resolution. Miigwech.
Microphone 4.
Thank you. And I don't really want to see all of the settler government, all the foreign governments' legislation and laws as the foundation for our action. I want our unextinguished jurisdictions to be quoted within our resolutions as we move forward, and I believe we should be quoting our own laws as per our unextinguished obligations to creation and the environment. Canada and Ontario have made illegal assertions of jurisdiction over the environment and have done a poor job of protecting it. I believe that we should be incorporating into this resolution our perspective. To heck with what Canada and Ontario recognizes or don't recognize. It's all based on the doctrine of discovery, a whole load of crap. So we can't keep shoring them up and giving them all this power. We make a decision, we say, you give these licenses to these people based on a flawed sense of jurisdiction, you clean it up. Don't expect us to be cleaning it up. And turn over jurisdiction back over to us and stop issuing all these licenses to these companies to pollute and harm our environment. It's pretty basic. This is really focused on the settlers' laws. It's not focused on our indigenous jurisdictions that we still have the rights to. And just because we don't hear about our laws in society, I think part of the work even in restructuring here should be talking about those champions that are seeing our laws and our ways of life coming to fruition in this really challenging time when we have governments like the Ford government in place. We need to be talking more about those champions and what we can do to replicate those kinds of champions. So here's an opportunity to replicate champion work that we see. I see it happening in Onion Lake. I see it happening in Saskatchewan. I see there's a group of First Nations people that are going to the people, and they've now worked on 80 laws that are replacing Canada's illegal laws, and they're just doing it. Like, we don't have to always be quoting what Canada provides for us. I believe the section within the Indian Act that allows for tax exemption is a load of crap. That's not our law. I think we should be saying, we are tax exempt, you have no right, blah, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter what they say, it's what our people say and what we know is our truth and our reality of what we reserved as the spirit and intent of our relationship with the newcomers to these lands. So I think we need to redo this resolution and have it based on an Indigenous perspective and Indigenous jurisdictions. Miigwech.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the floor, is that this resolution, while its intent is sound, the wording and the delivery or presentation of it needs some work. So I'm not going to be in a position to move further with this resolution until a redraft is done, or whether even the group who's spoken here and has presented some good views in terms of what this issue is and what it means to First Nations, maybe get together, have a discussion about whether or not a resolution is necessary at this time, or whether or not some other work can be done in the meantime to analyze the issue and come up with a plan moving forward. So I'll leave that in your hands, and we'll go from there. Oh. I'm getting a note from ORC here. She's indicating that the Coup Environment Office will be reissuing a brief note. Was that a briefing note? Oh. You weren't wrong about your handwriting. A briefing note, from October 2018, and we'll be adding more to give you more information and fill out some of the details here. Is that right? So let's let's just table this. We'll put this in the parking lot for now, and we'll come back to it in due course. It's early in the day and early in the assembly. Microphone 3.
You know, I think that before we leave here, we've got to take a position on this, and we've got to pass the resolution. So as long as your due course is tomorrow at the latest.
Okay, and just so everyone is aware, we're closing resolutions at noon tomorrow. So that's sort of your deadline that you're working under. But we're happy to bring this back, but it just sounds to me that people want to do a little bit more work with this and have some more discussion about it. And obviously we need some legal input in terms of what we should and should not be saying at this juncture based on the comments we've heard here today. And as you're aware, this was the last issue for today. We don't have any other resolutions to bring forward. They're not ready. And my understanding is there aren't going to be a huge volume of resolutions in this assembly. So unless there's anything.
I just got a quick question.
Oh, okay, Chief Collins. But we're pretty much at the end of the day today in terms of finishing the agenda.
You know, thank you again, Evelyn, and thank you to the chiefs for their input. I think it's very important that we walk away from this with a common understanding that, you know, Chief Sayers and Chief Hill said, we no longer recognize tax being imposed upon our community, and that's a stance that we need to take. And we don't need to be guided by legislation or Indian Act or anything like that. You know, when I hear about Leon, Larry, is he still here? We seem to follow a lot, and we need to be leaders, and we need to take a strong stance on this situation. And I'm asking the indulgence of the chair that this, because I am leaving tomorrow at 1. I have a meeting downtown to get to, and then I have to get home and try to do some campaigning because I have an election on Monday. So, and I haven't been home for that. So, but you know what? You know, I'm willing to set this aside until. Yeah, that'd be good. Okay. Okay, that'd be great. Yeah. So, I mean, we're looking for a few folks to help rewrite this resolution. That'd be great. Help with the committee, or resolution committee, to help rewrite it and take out that reference to carbon tax.
Okay, so you heard Chief Collins is asking for volunteers from any of his colleagues or other technicians who might want to spend a little bit of time this evening working with the resolution committee and see what we can bring back. And I'm hearing that he is having to leave early tomorrow, so we're happy to accommodate dealing with this resolution early in the day so that we can have him here for that discussion and passing the resolution. So if you're interested in helping the resolution committee, oops, that was somebody threw a glass. Was that me? Oh, something broke. So it would be great if you could approach the resolution committee, let them know that you're interested in working on this redraft, and be much appreciated. And we'll bring this back before Chief Collins has to leave tomorrow. So that brings us to the end of the day, and it's not even 4 o'clock. So well done in terms of sticking to the agenda and keeping the presentations pithy and short, and we will reconvene in the morning. We'll start at 8:15, please, for the drum. Oh, that's day 1. Sorry, day 2. 8:30. We're starting at 8:30 tomorrow morning, so everyone have a good evening, and hope you have productive meetings. Sunrise ceremonies at 6 a.m. Registration at 7. There's breakfast at 7. And we'll be reconvening the meeting at 8:30. Miigwech. It's like kids out of school.